Hello and welcome to the 9th episode of the Bees Analytica Podcast. On today's episode, we'll discuss the events that happened at Millwall, post-Brexit plans, and what football is like attending as a fan. Hiya boys, how are we doing today?
Yeah,
Very
good.
good, thank you. Oh.
After each other. It's good to be back for another week, and I think we'll have to open the conversation up really with the events that happened at Millwall, and not just at Millwall, by the way. There was others with West Ham and Colchester reporting booing as well. Yeah, I think we're all in agreement. It's just completely idiotic from all those that were booing. I think the big thing is that I don't think people quite understand the distinction between the two. Black Lives Matter is a peaceful protest at racial inequality. BLM is a political party that is registered in the United Kingdom. I think the big distinction is if you had Conservatives with a capital C and stuck with conservative values, but then Conservatives with a capital C turned around and started persecuting a certain religion, would we label all Conservatives the same? Would you do it? You wouldn't, because you would see the distinction. So why do we just group Black Lives Matter and what is a peaceful protest together, all into one clump? And it's a political party, it's a Marxist movement. That's the big thing. I just don't get that with why fans can't understand the difference between the two organisations. If you're against racial inequality, then you're an idiot and a complete tool. But you can be against a political party.
Yeah, I think it's lack of awareness and lack of understanding between the difference between the two. And ultimately, there are going to be horrible people out there and there are going to be racists out there. But at least you can do is just be quiet about it. You don't have to go and boo and be disrespectful for everybody else. If you're a prat, at least kind of be a prat that doesn't draw attention to yourself.
Yeah, I think that's the major thing with Millwall. I mean, I listened to it and you can tell it's not a majority. It is a minority that are ruining it and have ruined the club's name and dragged it through the dirt.
Mm-hmm.
And
you got to think as well, especially a lot of the work Millwall have done in the community to change their quote-unquote bad boy image from the 80s and 90s especially. They've done a lot of work to try and get themselves up to standard and improve on what their reputation is. I think they won Family Club of the Year for the last 2-3 years. And it's just their commitment to the community as well. They do some brilliant work with the community trust. But this just tarnishes it again. And it's another instance where you look at it and think, what the fuck? Really?
Because they got the same fans, haven't they? As much as the club do all they can, they've still got the same people going to games that have been going the last 50 years. And if they're prats, then they're still going to be there, unfortunately.
That's the thing. Right, you're in a crowd of 2,000 people, everyone's socially distanced. It's never been easier to spot you in a crowd.
Yeah.
Do they not expect the club to now turn around and ban them because they can see who you are? When you're sat 2 seats either side of you, no one's near you. Do you know what? They can tell. I just don't get the logic of what you're booing.
Especially those that, if you bought a ticket, chances are you've been going long enough and you've got a member card or however Millwall have done it. Surely it's easy enough to find out who was sat where and who said it.
Yeah.
And who's doing
You
what?
would hope so.
I mean, with the amount of cameras and stuff around, you'd like to think so. But
yeah, 100%
really
agree.
would.
I think it's one thing we might have different opinions on, but somewhat agree on. I do think the conversation needs to move forward now. But I don't think it has to come from us. We're three white men that have never experienced racial inequality in our lives. We've never been profiled because of the colour of our skin. We've never been looked at or judged walking into a job interview because of the colour of our skin. But I do feel leaders in the black community in football, your Alex Scotts, your Les Ferdinands, your Ian Wrights, your Chris Powells, need to move the conversation forward now. It's all well and good having the nil, and it's all well and good highlighting that issue because it obviously shows there's work needed doing with the booing. But we now need to move that conversation forward. How can we get more black coaches through the system? I think there's some ridiculous stat. There's only 6 non-white head coaches currently in the 92. There's only ever been 9 black managers since the Premier League started in 1992. That's abysmal numbers. But we now need to create that action plan. How can we move the game forward? How can we now enact change? But I don't think we have that. That's not for us.
I don't know how you would do it. And
No.
I don't envy the person that's got to come up with this plan, because you're changing 50, 60, 70 years of football, but it's got to be made, change for the better. It's about time. It's all well and good kneeling, but other than highlighting the issue, it's not particularly doing anything, which I think is where some of people's frustration has come from, is that it just now seems to just be coming just a habit and a tradition of, oh yeah, well, we go and they kneel, but what's it achieving?
Yeah.
I think we now need to go, and something needs to be done to make lasting change.
Exactly. But I get it just can't come from us. We've already seen someone like Greg Clark who made horrendous comments in the middle of House of Parliament. He's now gone. Can we get someone like Les Ferdinand stepping in and who understands the issues? We don't. We will never. Unfortunately, it's the way it is. We have never experienced it because we were built into this system and born into it, and we continue to reap the benefits of the system that our grandparents and before us built. But we now need someone that understands, who's gone through it, and they can then do the changes. And whatever that may be, I think that's the FA, how they need to step forward now. It's brilliant that we've had the gesture and it's highlighted and it's proven with the booing that it's needed, that change is needed. But that's the next step. And I think we're all in agreement with that. We could go on about this sort of topic. There's a lot of stuff that this comes from, but that's, again, very political, and there's no need to go into it in a football podcast. And with the racial tensions currently across the world, really, we could cover it in massive length. But we'll stick to the football side and what's going on in the EFL at the moment.
Yeah, I think it was good, though, just quickly harking back, I think it was good that Millwall obviously had their game on Tuesday and that it wasn't met. They obviously did something different. They didn't kneel. They did a linked shoulder, arm to arm, and had a banner. But at least they didn't show themselves up again, and that hopefully it's not a turning point, but it shows that they're not all arseholes, and that there is some light in the world at the minute.
Yeah, again, though, I don't think we should be applauding someone that they haven't booed something that's quite clearly at something that's got a complete different meaning, that's literally aimed at racial inequality. I don't think that should be applauded. It's a common decency. And that's just the worst part about it, is I just don't understand the logic of why you would boo it. I liked your point earlier you made about that they maybe don't understand the distinction between the two, or just of a certain generation, or haven't understood the issue properly. But anyone below the age of 30, probably even 35, will know, are up to date and with the modern times, and will understand and have the capacity to know there is the difference between a political party and a movement. That's the biggest thing and concern for me. And I hope Millwall root out these individuals or the group or whoever was booing. And even if it was all 2,000 people in attendance at the game, that they are banned and stopped from going to football.
Well, if they can't do it now, they're never going to do it. It's literally, they've made it as easy as it's probably going to be able to root them out. So now is the opportunity. Otherwise, it's probably never going to happen, because they're not going to be able to do it when another 20,000 go in.
Yeah, no, 100%. Again, I do feel very sorry for Millwall as a club. They've done a lot of brilliant work and in an attempt to clean themselves up, as you would say. But there is stuff that needs to be addressed, hopefully, at the club and across it. Again, we'll bring it back. It wasn't just Millwall, was it? There were pockets of instances across different clubs in the UK. Colchester and West Ham are the other big two that I saw. And hopefully they can identify these fans and educate them. I mean, Brentford did it a while ago with, I think, someone posted a lot of racist stuff on Twitter, aiming abuse at players. And the club, they banned him for, I think it was 5 years. But in that time, he got to sit down with someone like Marcus Gale, who was a Brentford legend, and sat down and educate him on issues of being a black man in football, and speak to him and understand his viewpoint and rehabilitate him as such. It's not really rehabilitation, but you know what I mean. And try and teach him. I think that's the way forward. I know you can't obviously do it with 200-300 people, and people are resistant to change. But I totally agree with James. I think it's more ignorance than anything, and just not understanding.
Yeah.
Education
Certainly.
is the way to go forward. And I think the younger you are, the more open to change you are. If someone's 70, it's not right, but I don't think you're going to change them at this point because they've been that way their whole life. And they've grown up into society and that is probably acceptable. But for anyone sort of our age and probably another 10 years on top, it's just, you can't do that anymore.
Well,
Because
it's
you
our
shouldn't
age
be able
that
to
are
do
going to
anything.
make the difference. It's our age group, and that's what I think is great. Like Marcus Rashford is obviously doing these free school meals. Now that's nothing to do with Black Lives Matter, but it's showing that anyone can make a change, and he's being an example to all of the younger 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds, 8-year-olds that you can make change, and I think it is up to our generation to facilitate that.
Yeah.
As you say, it's a lot of ignorance from people, and people are set in their ways, but the way it's going at the moment with the movement, with the kneeling, as you said, I think football needs to do what cricket has done, where they openly talk about it, they openly talk about the struggles, they openly talk about their experiences, and set out guidelines to improve and include everyone.
100% agree. On the topic of including and not removing people, we now come on to the beautiful topic of Brexit and the effects that will now have on the English game, especially the British game, sorry, with terms to transfers. I'll leave it to you, Alf, to open up. What's your initial thoughts on reading the report? What do we think?
Yeah, I mean, I like what the FA have done. I like it. I think it will introduce more homegrown talent. I think we obviously won't see it. And don't get me wrong, this is a great generation of English talent coming through. But in the future, there'll be more of it, and it'll be of an even better quality across the board with the new regulations about foreign youngsters and everything. And I think it'll benefit the Premier League. You won't see it, or not just the Premier League, but the whole EFL, Scottish League. You obviously won't see it straight away. It will take not a long time, but 5-10 years for us to reap the benefits of it. But yeah, I think it'll only be a positive.
It'll be really interesting to see what this does to the transfer window, considering English players' prices are already inflated. If a lot of the lower league teams are only gonna have to be able to scout out cheap English players that would automatically qualify for the point scene, it could really inflate the prices of English players. I mean, they've been trying to push English players anyway, and I think this will just help it. But obviously, needing 15 points and obviously internationally capped players automatically qualify anyway. I think towards the top end of the game, I don't think we'll see a great deal of difference really.
No, totally.
I think
James
it'll
is right on that.
encourage English youth. I think that's the main thing.
The biggest
As you
issue
say,
with
I
that
think
is EPPP, the Elite Player Performance Program. You just hamper those at the bottom end. It's all well and good feeding them through to the top end of the table, but what about those at the bottom? They can't sign players from abroad to replace their young players that have been poached. They can only scout within a certain radius of youth players. So there's a vacuum then. At
And the
League
best
1 and
ones
2 level, you then struggle. You run out of players. So they have to keep then going down the leagues that necessarily might be as good as from the National League or the National League South, which then means the League 1 and 2 quality becomes worse. But don't worry, our top end of the game is good. It creates that issue in the unfairness because EPPP wrecks
but I
football
think
clubs in its current form.
that's an issue that will need to be sorted out. But I think on the whole, it will improve English talent. It will increase numbers of English players playing in the top leagues. And we might see something like what's happened in Spain, where some of their best players do go to other countries to play. Like with Sancho, we're seeing at the moment at Dortmund. We may see English players like Beckham, like Owen, like Woodgate at the top clubs in Spain, like at Real Madrid. But the whole EPPP, I do agree, it needs to be fixed. And as you say, it needs to there is a worry that if they change it too much, like James said, the prices of players will just go through the roof, and there'll be no transfer market really. But done in the right way.
If you're Chelsea, right, and you've got 10 million quid, why not, under Elite Player Performance Programme, just hoover up all that talent? 50 to 100 grand you pay in compensation to a lower league team. You hoover them up, they're 16, 17, you put them in your youth system, they're all English, well done, they're at the top academy. They can then get spat out at the age of 20, 21.
Have you seen
Oh,
these
yeah,
also in the rules though? Is that from you can only sign six under 21s per season from next season.
Is that, I thought it was for international players, not just in-house.
I thought it was 3 international players.
It's 3 from 3 under 21s for January, and then six
As
next
it,
season. If that does include EPPP, then that could certainly help them if they're not allowed to bring in as many youngsters through the academy from other academies and put them into their academies. That could help Jake's issue.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's the issue I have. It's not an issue. It's just a worry that these lower league clubs, that someone like Crewe, who developed Nick Powell, who obviously then they sold for £2-3 million with a massive sell-on to Manchester United. You got Crewe again, who I speak about. I love their academy system. I think they're brilliant. Who have got 4 or 5 like Perry NG, Kitchen.
He's a great player.
Yeah, they've got all these young, youthful players, but then they just go for pennies. And you then just hamper the academy sides, or these lower league academy sides that can't compete anymore. I think Brentford, Wickham, and it ties into it, Birmingham now are shutting their academy down. And I'm like, what's the point? We're the third biggest or fourth biggest club in the Midlands, behind Villa, West Brom, probably Wolves as well. We can't afford to keep just running at a loss. And with all the Brexit restrictions now, and then the Elite Player Performance Programme on them, they're just going to struggle. They had Jude Bellingham came through, and probably Damari Gray and Redmond in the last 10 years that I can name off the top of my head.
But that's a lot of money in those 3 players. I know you're going to say it's not.
In the grand scheme of it, is it though?
That's a lot of money between the 3 of them.
I know roughly from the finances, Brentford's academy was running at 2.5 million losses a year. Times that by 10, that's 25 million to keep an academy to be the 4th biggest in West London, if that. And we had no player come through the academy. Like, I can't remember.
As you say, it's an issue that does need to be looked at. The EPP.
Okay. From your perspective, though, it's interesting. How's this going to change? How's this going to impact Brentford with your
100%.
scouting?
I'm on the fence with this one. I think I kind of agree with Alfie. I see the merits of it, and some of the clubs that now appear in the band 2 of the system, where they don't have to be as highly, something like the Turkish First Division, the Eredivisie, the Belgium, and youth tournaments that include South America. I think there are opportunities there for new markets. But
yes.
In its current form, if we were to go back 5 years and implement these rules, there's some big names that Brentford would miss out on. Your Malpais, your Ben Ramas, your Mbuemos, who wouldn't qualify under this permit. Your Danish players like Mad Bistrup that's come through. Jensen, that was, he was playing, but he was Danish and came through the system. Norgard. And that's limited our player pool. And I think...
And it's not just those players. It's arguably one of the best central midfielders in the world, in N'Golo Kante, wouldn't have been able to come over to this
wouldn't qualify.
Country. Or Riyad Mahrez.
I'm just talking from a Brentford view. And I'm biased, obviously, because we have a unique recruitment model to most clubs.
It'll be exciting to see what Brentford do. As you say, there are a lot of new opportunities, new places to look at now.
Mm-hmm.
But, the grounds where you've been successful, the French second division and Norway and all of that, they have kind of been shut off.
Yeah. that's my biggest concern, is that there's a few opportunities now, but I look at something like Band 2, they've classified the Championship and the Belgian First Division and the Eredivisie as the same quality. That's just not true. There is leaps and bounds between the top Dutch division compared to the Championship. And the Portuguese league, like your next Ronaldo potentially, might not qualify. I think the argument may be, though, because of the high level of youth appearances and that cover under Band 1, if they're good enough to be playing in them, then they'll be good enough to move across. So it doesn't really matter on the league. If a player's playing in League 2, in France, but they're playing at the FIFA Under-17s World Cup, they've played in the European Championships in the last 4 years, then they should be good enough to move across, I think.
But talent develops at different rates.
Mm-hmm.
Look at Jesse Lingard, was nowhere near the Manchester United team at 20 or 18 even. Alex Ferguson kept pursuing with him. Yes, okay, he's fallen down maybe due to personal reasons, but he was arguably England's best cam at that World Cup. He earned himself a place in that side.
Mm.
And if he was a foreign player, we would have missed out, or clubs would have missed out on him, because he wouldn't have been in any of the youth teams. He wouldn't have been at these tournaments. He wouldn't have. He didn't play that much. Yeah.
That is my worry, is that you say it's not just Brentford that will be a bit hit by this. Brighton have been a brilliant club recently in importing youth players from all across Europe, and now going to massively see their player pool reduced. That mean that they can't sign some of these quote unquote undervalued players or leagues.
They have been benefited by getting a lot of them out at the moment. But yeah, I do see your point.
Just like, if Brentford look at that whole table of justice, that pool on that, I've explained it before, but I'll explain it briefly for those that don't know what it is. Basically, it's rating or ranking every team by a few indicators. I don't know, I'm not in the know. And then ranking them, and those that come out with the biggest underperformance rating. And then looking at their players, or why are they underperforming, and then scouting them and picking them up players from there. So, like, that's the whole table of justice. But now that pool becomes even smaller, because we have to make sure that if, like, domestically, if a player's playing in Band 5, which the second division of French football is, if they've played between 90% and 100% of their minutes, they only get 4 points towards the 15. Which is ridiculous. Like, no player from that division is really going to qualify unless they're playing in all these youth tournaments. So you kind of just shot yourself in the foot now, because there's some quality leagues that aren't just going to get looked at.
Like, and that'll be to the benefit of a lot of other national teams, especially in the EU, that don't have these rules and that can pick these up at the expense of the English clubs.
Yeah, I think Alfie highlights it brilliantly with Kante. He is one of the best midfielders in the Premier League, and he wouldn't have been signed into these rules because he wasn't playing youth appearances. He was playing in the second division of French football, and he just now wouldn't qualify with the 15-point system. But the big thing is, though, this is very, very exciting. I'm really excited about Africa now becomes accessible. Youth Africa players that can now be signed. Really excited about South America and the possibilities of trading between championships and South America. Imagine that, right? The next name, instead of going on to Barcelona first, comes through Brentford or Reading or Birmingham. How cool would that be? That would be something completely different, and it would change the dynamic of the league. And I think that's a really interesting addition that they've added. But they've killed Europe.
When one door closes, another one opens, I guess. And we've just got to start looking at other markets that Europe, as we've kind of shut ourselves out of the Europe one. Be interesting, for sure.
I wonder if many clubs will follow like the Leipzig or City model, where they've bought clubs. So Brentford obviously has their sister club Midtjylland, which is now useless to them really in terms of Danish scouting, because that market's kind of been shut off unless they're an exceptional talent, which by that point you don't think they'll come to Brentford. Yeah. I wonder then if we'll see like the City Football Group, we'll see like the Liverpool Football Group or Championship clubs trying to buy other teams in other divisions to circumvent either around the work permit rules or improve their network.
Well, Reading have got a link with a Belgian club, so that could with
Is
them
that
being
through
banned
owner or is that through?
through the owner. The owner owns them, and Beijing, Renat, and China.
Because we're not mentioned at the Asian market as well. That ties in with the South American, Africa. That might be another possibility now that we see an influx of Asian players come across.
Yeah, we sent Aluko out to China last year to help against FFP. Which is interesting.
But the Chinese Super League has all sorts of rules to try and improve the development of Chinese players. I think you have to have a Chinese goalkeeper. I think you're only allowed 3 non-Chinese players in your play, or is it 5? I think it's only 5 Chinese.
It's 5 in the squad, 3 on the pitch.
So I think maybe China
Or 3
becomes
stars.
another hot pocket for countries and teams that are looking. And especially if you're a Reading owner, you'll think, oh, we've got a link there, we can scout, we've got the network, we get recommendations in. So we might see a few Chinese players now step across into, or like just Asia as a whole.
Oh yeah, as you said, it opens up a lot of markets. The only market it really closes is the European one.
Which is ridiculous considering we're next door to them. We'd rather fly players 10,000 miles in. Like,
yeah,
there is exceptional circumstances, and they've said there's the panel that may decide if a player is just shy. If I think it's something here. Yeah, if they're between 10 to 14 points, that they can submit it to a panel where they can discuss if they'll be exceptional enough to come through, which seems really stupid.
But then who's going to be on the panel? Who are these people to judge whether they're going to be good enough to bring in?
Yeah.
I think they named it the exceptions panel or something. Yeah.
It's interesting.
It's definitely that.
Big question I do have though is how are they rating these leagues? What have they based their maths on? Because I have my own view of how I rate leagues, and I've said I think the Eredivisie is bigger than the Championship. I wonder how they've done it. You could disagree with me, but
the Championship is much better quality than the Eredivisie.
Okay, we'll agree to disagree on that one. But anyway, that's the point. How have they sat down and gone, right, here's a list of leagues we rate as equal? What have they used? What method?
No, but yeah, exactly. The point is, Eredivisie, I would say, is on a similar level to the Championship. You just have 2 exceptional clubs in PSV and Ajax. Other than that, I fancy a Championship side to go over and do something.
I love how the Scottish Premiership is in Tier 1. That's just so funny.
Yeah. See, again, that's a similar situation. Portugal, I know they've rated them similar as well.
Yeah, they're banned too.
Really, you've only got 3 big teams. Other than that, you'd fancy a Championship side against them. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how they have rated them.
Because I know my methodology tends to be through ELO, which came over from Chess, which basically assigns each team a rating. Have they done the average of ELO? Maybe? Have they used... Because I know that's what they use for the national rankings now, is ELO rating.
I just love how signing a player from CSKA Moscow or from FC Rostov is now the same level as signing one from Celtic or Rangers. That's just those 2 teams thinking that they're going to come down and waltz the English leagues. Yet the same player from FC Rostov would have the same chance of making the Premier League.
It's very strange. Like someone from Toulouse, who are a League 2 team in France, you can't sign players from them particularly easily. It's not you saying you can't, it's just not particularly easy to do so. But you can sign a player from who's in Band 3 that we've looked at.
Brazil, Russia,
the Brazilian First Division. But you can't sign a French player. It just doesn't make sense in my head. I don't get why that's a logical step. Of right, you can buy him from Brazil, but not France.
Well, it's meant to be a kick in the teeth, isn't it, to the European Union? I think that's all it is. It's politics.
No, this was submitted by the FA. This was the FA that proposed this.
But I'm sorry, if you don't believe that politics doesn't come into this, then you're naive. Something, yeah.
Oh, see, one we've not even touched on, the MLS is in Band 4 as well. That's rated the same as the French second division. Like, that's the big question. How the hell have they rated these teams?
And is there room for movement? Because who knows, if the Czech Republic put a lot of money into improving their football division. Can they then go ahead of Russia if their league starts to stagnate?
Because it doesn't mention it in here. We might just be missing it when reading it, to be honest, boys. And
Well,
we've
it was
just couldn't...
37 pages long, so it was a bit of a read, and there's lots of extra added on bits and PSs and whatever else. But I would be intrigued to see if this is it, or if
Yeah, this has been approved by the Home Office. This is pretty much what it's going to be from January the 1st.
Whether they will review it every few years to change the bans around, or whether the MLS is forever going to be one of the lowest ones to bring people in. Because I know they're putting a lot of money and a lot of resources into improving that league, and if a lot of talent comes up, because America's a big country, I guarantee there'll be a
think of the City Group, New York FC.
Oh, they've got tons. I think they've got 10 teams.
Where the Stefans come from that made his debut in the Champions League, or Jack Harrison that they sold to Leeds have come from.
When you got Pulisic, obviously he's American.
Yeah. Pulisic is American.
He came from Germany though, so Germany. We'll just have to make them go through Europe first before they come to us.
I mean, Alphonso Davies was from Canada. Look how well he's done.
Well, plays in the MLS, but Canadian. Based. I was thinking more Almiron. Was another one on that list. Like he couldn't just sign. But then would he qualify under international appearances?
Derby wouldn't have been able to sign Rooney.
No, because he's British. It doesn't matter. If they've got a British passport, they'll be fine.
Yeah, but if he was American.
Someone like Jack Harrison was British before he came over, because I think he had British parents. So,
well, he's got an English accent. I think he lived in England and then moved across to America when he was young.
Which is fair. I respect that. I would happily soak up American stuff.
Really, really interesting to see how it works, to be fair.
Okay, so where are Almiron? So he's Paraguayan, isn't he? Let me have a look. So would he have qualified into the system?
I reckon he made a cap before he joined. At least one.
Their FIFA ranking is 48th on as the women's game. Wrong one. They're 34th in the men's ranking. So between 31 and 50, if he'd played, is that in a year? So they're saying if he'd played 90 to 100% of his team's games, but it doesn't specify the time frame, then he would be an auto pass. If he'd played 80 to 89, he'd be an auto pass. 70 to 79, an auto pass. But then 60 to 69 would have been 10.
Well, it sounds like he would have got in anyway.
It doesn't specify the minutes. It says all players shall be granted the number of points set out in Table 1 in the respect of the player's international appearances. Is it 100% of appearances of all time? No, because that'd be stupid. Because then you just get... because then they wouldn't qualify.
He played every minute ever.
of Paraguayan football. So would he qualify? I think he would.
Who knows?
If you've made an international appearance, you automatically qualify.
No, you don't. Only up until a certain point.
Oh, is that what it is? Up until 50?
Yeah, so if it's up until 51 and below. So this is just such a steep drop off.
I mean, that's a big old gap. 1 to 50. That's a lot of nations when you can automatically qualify.
Yeah. 1 to 10, you automatically qualify even if you've played 39% or more. 30% or more. If you're between 11 to 20 and you've played more than 40%, you automatically qualify. If you've played 21 or more, if you're ranked between 21 and 30 and you've played more than 60% of games, you automatically qualify. If you're between 31 and 50th in the world and you've played more than 70% of games, then you automatically qualify.
We wouldn't have signed Felipe Aruno, Alfie. That's for sure.
No.
You know what?
Although would we, because he came from
Sao Paulo. He didn't make a...
No, but he came from the first division of
Brazilian
division. Football.
So I think he'd probably have enough point.
See? I don't know.
And he never played he never played for Brazil, which
no, he definitely didn't
put in.
So maybe it seems like they're trying to push forward with a lot more emphasis on the youth. Because there's a lot of youth competitions, as I said earlier.
Brexit, aren't we? So we're obviously the main emphasis is to improve the English players coming through and give them more opportunities. And then we're trying to obviously make it as easy as possible to still bring in the highest quality, so Chelsea and United can still go out and buy the best players in the world. But then there's a bit of a gap between the rest.
Yeah, the Championship is going to be absolutely fascinating come the end of it, isn't it? Like,
Oh, yeah.
I hope Brentford. I don't know. I trust Matthew Benham to the hill comes home. I guarantee they've already got plans in place of who we can sign, targets that would meet the criteria, and all of that jazz. But I think clubs are going to have to get clever. Otherwise, we're going to see some fall behind.
There'll always be loopholes that someone will be willing to exploit.
Oh,
so I'm
yeah.
sure it won't be long before there'll be someone bringing in a player that shouldn't have qualified but will.
It'd be like that Traore, where he came from before he was 18. Chelsea
Yeah.
brought him in.
For every rule, there's about 100 ways of breaking it. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the near future regarding that.
Yeah,
But no, it's interesting. It's the first time in our lifetime, really, that we've seen a proper big change up in football in this regard. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how football changes after this moment. It obviously won't be straight away, but in the next sort of 3 or 4 years,
yeah.
see what the state of football's like at that point.
I think the best thing to summarise it is there are some really good things that could come of this, and there's some awful things that just don't look good on paper. But as everything, time will tell of how this plays out.
Yep, we're just going to have to suck it and see.
I think to close up, boys, I think we'll have a discussion because I know you've both been back at football as a fan. I've been working during the pandemic, so I've been experiencing it in the empty stadium. I want James. Can you open up then? How did you find your experience at Reading Birmingham yesterday? And what's it like, atmosphere-wise? You know.
Yeah, well, it obviously depends on the match. The match is a big point. I happened to go to a dreadful performance from Reading and a loss, so it was never gonna be great. But from what I hear, the win on Saturday was electric, considering it's 2000. But it didn't seemed all right. But it's the main reason why I go to football is to have a laugh with my mates, and having to sit on my own because none of my mates had enough points to go with me, and to have to be told to sit down and to clap and cheer when something worthy happens. Yeah, it was good. It was nice to be back. I missed being at the Medeski, but it certainly wasn't the same. And I don't think I'm gonna love going as much until it goes back to normal. Personally,
I think you hit the nail on the head. It's just such a big social thing, and without being able to mix households, or because I'm in a different situation, whereas I would go with my siblings because it was our thing. Whereas as someone that like you, that's family, is not particularly interested in football, to say the least. Yeah, I can imagine that was quite lonesome being on your own, just not being able to talk to anyone, having to keep your distance, and
yeah. I mean, it's close enough distance that you can sort of talk to the people around you. I don't know if it's allowed, but people were, and it's quite a nice camaraderie because you do eventually get chatting to the people around you because you haven't really got a choice. But it's not the same as going and being there and seeing it with your mates live and getting the reactions and whatever else. But ultimately, if Reading had won, I don't think I would have cared one jot how the atmosphere was because I just wanted 3 points. And it
The
beats
atmosphere on the Saturday was amazing when Reading were winning.
It started
was
really
amazing.
well on Tuesday. Yesterday, it started well when the players came out, but the performance just sort of sucked all the life out of it. And then going 2-0 down never helps. But no, it was. I don't know how Alfie feels about working there, and it's probably more difficult for him to try and do his job with all these regulations in. But it's not going to be the same until you can get sort of 15, 20,000 properly in. Get away fans back. That'll always help. Add alcohol to the mix because obviously they don't serve alcohol there. Get a few beers in.
I think that's sensible at the moment, though. With the
I'm not saying
current climate.
but I'm just saying until that's all back to normal, I don't think it'll be as nearly half as much fun as it would normally be.
as someone that was working, Alf, did you find most people were following guidelines and keeping safe, or was it a bit of a ball ache having to remind people constantly?
Do you know what? You do have to remind people because I think people, obviously, we've all been football for a lot of our life. Turning up, it's always quite relaxed. It's quite free. You do what you want. You get in the ground. You watch the game. So there was a lot of reminding people, but overall, people are just happy to be there. They're just happy to be back watching football. So, they listen to everything. They'll do everything you ask of them. The only thing, and I don't think you can blame people, is the exit where people just left. There was a I don't know how you say it, a plan in place to leave, to get people to leave in social distance manner. And
Yeah, that didn't happen, did it?
That it didn't happen because it's a cold -2 degrees or whatever it was, school night, work night. People just want to get home.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that didn't work so well. But yeah, I loved it. I loved being back, watching the football. People were just appreciative to be back.
People know you can't keep them 100% safe, and if people are that concerned about it, then they just don't go until it's safer. But those that were there did everything that was asked of them. And yeah, like you said, there was just a lot of people, including me, that was just sat there, got there early, and just thought it's nice to be back again after 8 or 9 months.
It's an odd one. I think I've quite enjoyed working it, to be honest, without fans. I know that sounds really bar humbuggy.
Oh, I love watching it with 2,000 fans because you can actually hear what the players are saying. And my God, without the fans in there, I wouldn't have known that Liam Moore was such a leader of that side. He literally directed everything, and you could hear him. But equally, nothing will replace the buzz of 15,000 fans watching a game of football.
I'm with you, Alfie. I found that from working. It's just, I love, especially in the industry I'm in as an analyst, I love being able to listen to what's going on the pitch. There's so much going on around it, and I quite enjoy not having the fans, because you can hear what's going on. The coach doing certain things, like the detail a coach does during a match day is brilliant, and I love having that insight as a young man that's in analysis for the first time, or as part of that. But I totally agree. Nothing beats the buzz of if some of the late goals at the club we've scored this season, and if there was all the fans in attendance, that would place the roof would have come off, and that would have been absolutely incredible to see. And I would have really enjoyed that type of thing. But from a nerdy point of view and a statistic and an analyst point of view, I love having that insight because there's been moments of the game where the coach has shouted up at the gantry in asking for stuff, and that would never happen if there was fans. You can make tactical changes.
It just makes people so much more appreciative when it does come back, and people sit there and realise, crap, what have we lost for that year? And they're going to make sure that you don't, make sure you savour every minute of it, because you never know when it could get taken away again. I never knew in February that I wouldn't go to another game for 8 months, or however long it was. I'd have damn well stayed longer if I realised that it was. I stayed behind until the steward physically removed me. So, yeah, I think it's nice to be getting back to some sort of normality. We're not there yet, but we're getting there.
It's just see how this goes. I wonder how long we'll be able to go. Hopefully, touch wood, there'll be no positive cases coming out of the next week or so, but we won't see it until the next 2 weeks anyway. I just don't want to be that person that's to do the contact tracing for 2,000 people that might have been at the game. So I think that's a good episode there, boys, to wrap it up. And I think we'll go into next week with the last one before we take our Christmas break. Please do go check out my Twitter. There will be a poll there running to see if we'll do it live. We'll do like an interactive quiz with some viewers over on Twitch, or if you want us to do a pre-recorded episode where we'll bring a special guest in and we'll just have a bit of a laugh. Basically, I'll put a quiz together and let the boys try and answer it. But I'd say cheers very much, Alfie and James, for joining for this week.
Thank you very much.
Cheers, Jake. Cheers,
We'll go on to episode 10 for next week, and we'll go out for Christmas with a bang. Thank you. Please like, subscribe, share wherever you can. It really massively helps out the account. Some of the episodes have been doing brilliant recently, so it's really great to see people enjoying them. That's enough from me, and we'll go on to the next one.